The nuclear program, Iran's nuclear program, is not unlike some people want to portray it as a national pride. It's been a disaster. It's not a blessing. It's a curse for Iran. They have spent hundreds of billions of dollars in vain for nothing. We understand the legitimate concerns of the international community for Iran's nuclear program. But apart from that, and for us, even before that, we are against it because it's against our people. It has taken the Iranian people hostage and deprived Iran of peace and prosperity.
Iran's opposition leaders, like the Kurdish Iranian Komala party head, Abdullah Mohtadi, watch closely from the sidelines as the current regime faces growing pressure from Israel and the USA over its nuclear ambitions. For now, a tenuous peace holds over the skies of Iran as a post-mortem is conducted in the USA over the real impact of its bunker-buster bomb strike on the Iranian nuclear facilities on Sunday, the 22nd of June. Well, President Donald Trump has said he would bomb Iran again if necessary, while Tehran says it's not willing to resume nuclear negotiations, although there are reports of the USA trying to find some path to talks. Meanwhile, intelligence briefings in the US Congress tackle the contradicting information about the effectiveness of the US strike. To find out how the opposition groups in exile fit into the bigger picture, I sat down with the Kurdish Iranian leader Abdullah Mohtadi a couple of weeks ago for an in-depth chat. And then Israel hit Tehran just 2 days later. So I caught up with Abdullah Mohtadi in the aftermath of what's being called the 12-day war in order to update our conversation by adding his perspective on the conflict. So, Mr. Secretary General, we spoke literally just a couple of days before the conflict escalated to the point where Israel was striking Iran. And then, of course, the US joined in with its bunker buster bombs, and things have just gone through a roller coaster. Let me get your assessment of what was really done during that conflict. Did the US strike, for example, have any real impact on Iran's nuclear capabilities?
I'm not an expert on damage assessment, but it seems to me, from the news that I can hear and follow, that the damage has been extensive, both on nuclear and military sites in Iran.
To the degree that Iran, its capabilities have been diminished, many people say they could just shift to another location. The talent is still there, the knowledge is still there, and that if Iran really wants to, it could pick up within months even. That's one of the assessments.
No, I don't think so. I'm not sure about, I don't have any intelligence or information about the nuclear material, but as long as the war itself and its damage is concerned, the Islamic regime was defeated on the front, on the foreign front, on the war against Israel, and the Iran sky was dominated by Israeli planes. They bombed anywhere they wanted, and they inflicted heavy casualties, heavy losses on the Iranian upper level of command, Revolutionary Guards command structure. So, and the people saw with their eyes the vulnerability and weakness of the regime.
How did you regard what turned out to be a strange kind of back and forth on the US assessment of what happened? Intelligence that came out from the US itself said there wasn't really much of an impact, while President Trump and his immediate circle said that this had been a major impact against Iran. The contradiction, how do you view that?
I really don't know. I assume that with the technology and the military power of the United States, it must have been a very effective blow, but I'm not an expert on that, and it's not appropriate for me to comment on that.
What I've been reading in recent news, Mr. Secretary General, is that the Iranian regime has been arresting many people, many being arrested and imprisoned, even executed, according to some reports, because they're believed to be spies for Israel, that there was a high level of Israeli agent infiltration within the Iranian regime. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the regime tries to intimidate people by arresting and executing some people, accusing them of being Israeli spies, to reassert its power. But people, they cannot undo what has been done. The people have witnessed with their own eyes the weaknesses and vulnerabilities of the Iranian regime and its powerlessness towards the Israeli planes and the American strikes.
I know you've been lobbying heavily in the US for support, and Donald Trump came out soon after the strike saying he was not looking for regime change because he didn't want to see what he called chaos in the region. How does his stance, if that is to stand, because he may change his mind, but if he does decide regime change is not on the agenda for the US in its role in what happens in the region, how does it affect your stance in terms of getting your party and the rights that you're looking for?
Dealing with the political system in Iran and the Islamic regime is something for the Iranian people to decide. We, as the Kurdish people, as well as other freedom-loving people in Iran, we want a new system, a new democratic, prosperous, peaceful Iran, a new secular Iran, a new federal Iran, whatever you may describe it. And this is something for us to decide and for us to do something about it.
Do you see any role for the US then in terms of the direction it might take the country?
It depends on the future developments of the country. If there is a reasonably cohesive and democratic alternative to the regime, if people rise up again for their peaceful demands, if we witness more protest movements, of course the United States, the Europeans, and the international community don't like Iran to fall into chaos. So they may help the Iranian democratic opposition, but it's too early for that.
Now, of course, the Crown Prince, the Pahlavi, has been quite vocal in his willingness to step forward and take a role, as there was a sign that things may actually progress in Iran as far as the regime being affected. What role do you think the Crown Prince has in all of this? Does he have something that's aligned with your desires when it comes to how Iran might change in the future?
Well, as a personality, and then as the son of the Shah of Iran, he can promote what he thinks is good for himself or for the country. But it's the Iranian people who eventually decide about the future of the country in a democratic referendum about the best political system for Iran. But considering him to be a leader of the transition period, I don't think so.
Well, I was going to say that I know that you, as the Kurdish Iranian opposition, have in the past also been at odds with the Shah when he was power in trying to get your rights secured. It's correct, yeah?
It is correct, yes.
Mr. Secretary General, what do you see as the next steps happening? What do you think will happen in the coming days and weeks? The US says it may strike again, Israel may strike again. The ceasefire that's taking place, or at least the relative ease of hostilities, is uncertain. What do you expect to happen?
I think the 12-day war is over between Iran and Israel, but the hostilities and the conflict between these two countries, and in fact between Iran and the United States, will continue because the supreme leader, albeit in a very weak position, but still loudly threatens the world, and loudly they are defying the international community and the calls for a peaceful solution to the nuclear program in Iran.
An update there from Abdullah Mohtadi. Now, to get a deeper insight into what Iran's opposition groups are seeking, here's the full conversation I had with the Komala Party Secretary General prior to the recent clashes. Start by telling me, why are you in Washington, D.C.? What's the goal of your trip here?
Thank you very much for having me. I've come to Washington to meet with people in government, in the Congress, and media to discuss the problems of my country, Iran, and my people, Kurdish people of Iran, with them, and raise awareness about the plights of Kurds, raise awareness about the situation in Iran with the American audience.
Any particular reason for coming at this time, or is this something you do regularly?
I've come to the United States, to Washington, since 15 years ago. And this time, I think my presence in Washington is very timely, because you know the situation, you know the negotiations, the nuclear negotiations, the tensions in the Middle East. So I think it's timely.
How do you generally get received here? I mean, we'll talk a little more about this, but the Kurdish issue, for example, in itself is not one that's really on the radar of the American people much.
I've been received very well. Maybe it's not on the agenda now, but Kurds have demonstrated that they are good friends and allies of the United States. And people in the government and politicians or ex-politicians, think tanks, the media, they respect Kurds.
The Trump administration, though, has its own kind of unique focus as far as a lot of people are concerned. What's your view on how the current administration, quite new back into government, so to speak, for Mr. Trump, how is he kind of responding, if you've had any feedback?
Well, we also, like President Trump and his administration, we believe in that Iran should be a non-nuclear state, a peaceful state, peaceful, democratic, secular state, without malign activities in the region. So there are so many things that we feel we have in common with this administration.
How did you feel about what President Obama did then, when he was president, when he tried to engage with Iran, try to get some progress in the relationship? Wouldn't that have been a useful way to approach it?
President Obama didn't listen to Iranian people at the time. There was Green Movement. It was a huge protest movement, a very democratic one. And people shouted in the streets, Obama, Obama, Ba'unaya Obama, which means, Obama, are you with us or with them? With people or with the government? Unfortunately, Obama didn't listen to the plights of the Iranian people and their aspiration for democracy.
So in terms of the intervention you would seek from America, what would be the best route that America could take to help your cause?
We do not seek America's military intervention, no American boots on the ground. That's not what we want. But we think that the Trump administration, President Trump and his administration, should adopt an open-door policy with Kurds and other Iranian democratic oppositions. People should listen to the Iranian people and their aspirations.
From some of the accounts of the opposition to the regime, I guess yourself included, there's not much opportunity for the people to have a voice, though. So how would they engage in a way that would be meaningful? How can, for example, the US administration get a better idea of what the Iranian people want through the opposition?
Well, the Iranian Kurds are organized. They have political parties. There are political parties of the opposition who are in exile in Europe, in the United States, and also the activists who are inside the country, political prisoners, union activists, teachers, students, women. If the United States wants to engage them, they could find them easily.
So, Dr. Mohtadi, in an article you wrote in March of this year, just a couple of months ago, the headline of it literally stated, a golden opportunity for a peaceful and democratic Iran. Now, why do you think of it as a golden opportunity at this moment?
Because the Iranian regime is at its weakest point since the revolution in 1979. In 2020, September 2022, a movement, a protest movement erupted. It started in Kurdistan and spread across the country and gained the attention of the international public opinion, the Women Life Freedom Movement.
That was because of the death of Mahsa Amini, Gina Mahsa Amini, as you call her.
Yes, exactly. And the legitimacy of the government has been eroding very fast. And in fact, Iran is showing many of the symptoms of a failed state. There is no electricity, no water, no inflation is rampant. National currency is falling down rapidly. The government is incapable of providing the very basic services to the people. So it is showing signs of becoming a failed state. And people are dissatisfied, they are unhappy with the system, especially women and the young generation. Ethnic minorities are under very bad suppression. So it's time, and especially Iran's proxies are beaten, and the regional influence of Iran is much weaker than before in the eyes of the region and the eyes of Iranian people. So it's a golden time for the United States and the West, and indeed the international community, to engage the Iranian, Kurdish, and otherwise democratic opposition to think about the future Iran.
I'll break down some of these points you've raised through this interview, but let me get to, again, in this article, what you've said is the country is, quote, a powder keg, vulnerable to a single spark. What would you see as that single spark being?
Nobody can predict, but like Gina Amini or Mahsa Amini, unlawful killing of a young woman because of his bad hijab.
Oh, headscarf, yeah.
Could be another incident like that, or whatever. You never know. Bouazizi, what happened? It became a spark. You never can foresee what the spark would be, but Iran is a powder keg. People are very angry with the system, and they are protesting almost daily. Truck drivers, teachers, workers, mine workers, students, everybody.
Would it be fair to say, because of the traveling you do and you see how Iran is portrayed outside the country, would it be fair to say that this side of Iran isn't really seen or understood by people outside the country, because that would not necessarily be the impression most people get about what's going on in Iran?
It's the fault of the international media. They don't pay attention to the nuclear issue, but they should pay more attention to the domestic policies of the Iranian government and the aspirations of Iranian people, their fights, their struggles, their hopes for the future. It's not fair. The international media has not been fair to the Iranian people, especially the Kurdish people in Iran.
Do you get the impression sanctions are actually working against Iran?
Look, the nuclear program, Iran's nuclear program, is not unlike many people. Some people want to portray it as a national pride. It's been a disaster. It's not a blessing. It's a curse for Iran. They have spent hundreds of billions of dollars in vain for nothing. And it has deprived Iran of golden opportunities for development and prosperity. It has impoverished Iran. It has kept Iran in a crisis, in a constant crisis for decades now. So we want to get rid of it, for not only for what the West, we understand the legitimate concerns of the international community, for Iran's nuclear program. But apart from that, and for us, even before that, we are against it because it's against our people. It has taken the Iranian people hostage and deprived Iran of peace and prosperity.
Well, you're attributing the blame to the nuclear program, but what about the impact of sanctions? I mean, how realistically are sanctions working?
They are effective, but of course, the impoverished people and they're not, of course, may have made people suffer economically.
So then, if they're not effective against the country's regime,
it is effective against the country's regime as well. I mean, it has impacted everybody, even the people, even the normal people. But I blame sanctions and blame the Iranian regime for that.
No, I understand the blame, but I'm saying it sounds like if all this time the sanctions have been imposed on the country, it's not really had much impact on the regime itself.
It does, because the sanctions have made the regime financially broke for some time, for some years.
So how has the regime managed to last so long in the face of these sanctions?
Well, because of repression. It is a repressive, totalitarian government that doesn't look after its people. They don't care about people's lives and livelihoods. They don't care about providing services to people. They don't care about education. They don't care about hospitals. They don't care about anything. So the only thing that they care and they put money is the nuclear program and the military programs interfering in the region.
If there have been protests, as you've described, truck drivers and so on, and people protesting daily against the conditions there, why have they not been strong enough to perhaps create some change in the regime? How has the regime dealt with them?
With brute force. And I think it has eroded the legitimacy of the government very sharply. We have had movements. In 2009, we had Green Movement. It was a protest against rigging the elections. And then we had, in different years, we had protests against price rises, fuel price rises. And eventually lastly we had the Jina movement, or Women Life Freedom movement. They are very important movements. And I'm hopeful than before that something will happen in Iran. In fact, everybody in Iran is waiting for something, is waiting for a social upheaval. They don't know how it will start, but everybody is convinced that something has to happen in Iran.
Now, with the US administration under Donald Trump as president, there's much more of an introspective approach to America's affairs. The MAGA movement, it seems to be very focused on what US public is concerned with, as opposed to what's going on outside. So, people might ask, why should the US care about what's happening with Iran?
Iran is a very important country, and Iran is an ally of Russia, an ally of China, and hostile to the United States, the biggest sponsor of terrorism in the region and in the world. So it's in the best interest of the United States that we have a peaceful, democratic country in Iran, a responsible member of the international community, at peace with its neighbors, and at the service of its own people. This is in the best interest of the United States.
Dr. Mohtadi, I know, when you travel, you probably connect with the Iranian diaspora. How engaged is the diaspora of Iran in what's going on in the country itself?
No, the majority of the Iranian people outside the country do care about their country, do care about the Iranian people and its future. They're ashamed of this regime. They want a modern, advanced, democratic country. Everybody is for a free Iran.
What makes the Kurdish population, which you represent, the Iranian Kurdish population, what makes that different, perhaps say special, in terms of its role in Iran?
In 1979, April 1979, there was a kind of referendum in Iran, Islamic Republic, yes or no. Kurds were the only people in Iran. Of course, there were individuals or special groups, but the only ethnic group, the only region of the country where people boycotted that election. We as Kurds never supported Khomeini. We never supported the Islamic Revolution. We protested against the Shah, both for democracy and for our own rights, but we never supported and endorsed Khomeini and his regime. That is why Khomeini took revenge against Kurds and ordered an unprovoked big onslaught against Kurds in August 1979. And since then, they had treated Kurds like a dangerous security matter rather than citizens of Iran. And Kurds have been behind, they have behind many movements in Iran. They have been very resilient people. They're peaceful, but they are against the regime, and they don't lose any opportunity to express their dissatisfaction with the system. And they can be pillars of democracy in the future of Iran. You cannot solve the Iranian problem without engaging Kurds and without participation of the Kurds in any future Iran. So Kurds are not only demographically but also politically are a necessary ingredient of and a component of the future of Iran.
Now, of course, the Kurdish population is across a number of countries because you have them in Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and of course in Iran. What is the issue in getting more unity among the Kurdish population in general? Is that something that could happen?
It could happen in the future, but it's not on the agenda now. The population of Iranian Kurds amounts to at least 10 million people, which means that they number more than Kurds in Syria and Iraq put together. But we want our rights within a democratic Iran, and a peaceful, democratic, and federative Iran, a federal Iran where the rights of Kurds are protected by the law, by the constitution. We want power sharing. We want that ethnic and religious diversity is acknowledged in Iran.
So you're not really seeking independence for Kurdish people in terms of an independent Kurdistan. You're looking more at the idea of rights for Kurds within Iran as Iranian Kurds. What would be the relationship you would have then with the Kurdish population outside? What makes you different?
Historically speaking, I acknowledge the rights of Kurds for aspirations for statehood, but it's not in our program. Let's leave it for the future generations. What we now find realistic is fighting for democracy and human rights in Iran and for the rights of Kurds within a democratic Iran.
So yes, you've called for what you describe as a democratic, secular, pluralist, federal Iran.
Yes.
What would that look like to you? How would it work in terms of the different people within Iran, the different groups, minorities, and so on?
People can have their own parliaments, their own say in running their affairs, education in mother tongue, a decentralized Iran, and the rights of Kurds and others should be protected and safeguarded in the Iranian constitution.
Would it work to have a decentralized Iran? Would you be able to create sounds like a federation of states?
Yeah, it is. Not a federation of states. I don't know. I cannot predict the future, but what I'm insisting, what we are emphasizing is that the Kurds should have their rights. It's not just Kurds, the Baluchis, the Arabs of Ahwaz, and others should have their rights. They should have a say in the running of their affairs. And They should have, alongside Persian, they should have education in their own mother tongue. It's natural. It's natural in a democratic country, and the world has so many examples of that.
I guess people would ask.
India is one of them. Canada is one of them, and there are even Spain, Catalonia.
I guess people would ask, how would you stop the identity of Iran as a unified country dissolving if it goes into these different groups?
No, it will not dissolve by respecting the diversity, ethnic diversity of the country. Quite the contrary. It will strengthen the unity of the people, because people will be satisfied. If you have a system of power sharing, this does not mean the people will dissolve, the integrity of the country will dissolve. On the contrary, it will strengthen the unity of the country by respecting the differences that there are. And these differences they are made by history, by thousands of years of history. Kurds have a culture of their own, a language of their own, a history of their own, and this should be respected. In fact, for the recent, it's more than 3 decades now that there is a big national awakening of Kurds of Kurdish identity. So Kurds are very sensitive to that.
Presumably, the country would still need a strong leader to provide the inspiration, I guess, for everyone to kind of live in harmony. What sort of leader would you see in Iran that would work?
I am for a parliamentary democracy, where the prime minister is elected by the majority of the parliament, and everything is discussed in the parliament. Of course, we should have a president, but I'm not for a presidential system. I'm for a democratic system, a parliamentary democracy.
Where do you see the theologists fitting into all of this?
Well, we are for freedom of religions, no discrimination against any religion. For example, we have the Arsani people in Iranian Kurdistan, an ancient Kurdish religion. They're even more under pressure. They're like Baha'is. They're more under pressure than Sunnis in Iran. Every single religion must be respected by the law.
On that note, how much of it's a Shia majority state, but how much of an issue is the Shia, Sunni, and perhaps other sects? Diversity, how much of an issue is it?
It is an issue. The guess is, my educated guess is that about 25% of the country belong to the Sunni section of Islam. And there are also other people. As I told you, we have Yarsani people, we have Christians, Armenians, Jews, Baha'is. Everybody should. Iran is a diverse country. Iran is a remnant of an ancient and medieval empire. So there is no one nation, one ethnic group, one state. It has to be pluralist. It has to be pluralistic. It has to respect the different identities, different religious and ethnic identities, cultural identities that people have.
Well, many of its neighbors are Sunni majority countries, and they feel to some degree the threat is the Shia Iran. Could that be addressed to allow neighboring countries in the Gulf and other parts of the Arab world to accept a majority Shia country that is pluralistic, as you describe? Would there be a system that could work?
It could work. In fact, it's the only system that could work, because the current system isn't working. The Iranian regime has been involved in destabilizing Arab countries, creating factions, Shia factions, who are hostile to their own system, to their own society, and has fueled the hostility between Shia and Sunni in the region. with the removal of this regime, the calm will come back to not only to the Shia and Sunni conflict, but also to the whole of Middle East.
You know, talking of leadership, Iran's had an interesting mix. I know, of course, there's the overarching theological side to it, the leadership from the Ayatollahs. But you had, for example, not that long ago, a very unique president in terms of President Ahmadinejad. Now, of course, you have Masoud Pezeshkian. What do you make of him? A lot have hopes that he'd be a more moderate leader, maybe someone that the West could deal with.
It's not important whether he's moderate or not, a genuine moderate or not, because all the power is concentrated in the hands of the supreme leader, and it's him who decides.
Then what options are there for the people? If it's going to be held, ruled by religion, there's not going to be much scope for debate, I would guess.
No, there is no debate. There is no real, genuine democratic debate inside the ruling circles of this government. Iran is run by a variety of mafia-like people. They have monopolized the political and the economic financial power in Iran, and there is rivalry among them also. They are only united against their own people and the United States.
Well, I know you've said you don't ask for American boots on the ground there, but if the opposition groups, as you describe them, are generally oppressed or threatened, could you see unity among the opposition groups in order to put forward a united front against the current regime?
We are working on that. It's a necessity. We have to do it.
And at what stage are you?
There are many efforts going on this. I'm not going into the details now, but I'm aware of and I'm participating in some of them.
Would you ever advocate for an armed struggle against the regime from within Iran?
When the woman life freedom movement started, the Iranian Pastaran Revolutionary Guards launched rockets and missiles against Kurdish bases, Iranian Kurds in Iraq, because they wanted us to resort to violence against it. But we resisted. We showed restraint, and so this is not our choice. If this is not our choice, our favorite choice is toppling the regime through people's rise, through people's uprisings, through social movements, through protest movements, and through reforms. But it's up to the government. It's a regime choice, not the people's choice.
But you wouldn't rule out the idea of an armed struggle if it came to it?
I wouldn't rule out the idea of an uprising against the system. That's the best way.
Now, of course, you remain in exile and have your bases, for your party at least, in Iraq. How has that relationship evolved with the Iraqi Kurdish side? And the Iraqi government, actually?
We respect the sovereignty of the Iraqi governments and have done nothing to violate it. And we have good relations, friendly relations with the KRG and political parties in Iraqi Kurdistan.
Are you totally free to express yourselves, though, with your goals for Iran itself?
Yes, we are doing that.
Without creating any kind of conflict between Iran and Iraq in general?
No, we are free to speak our minds and to talk about our programs, our political programs. What we are not engaging is armed struggle against the Iranian regime, which we don't.
What sort of reaction has there been to you, the Komala party in Iraq, in exile, taking on board Peshmerga fighters, who are military basically, in terms of that position?
Therefore self-defense. We have not been engaged in any armed struggle, armed activity for more than for more than about 30 years now, for 25, 30 years now. But we have to have them to protect ourselves, because if you don't have peshmergas, they come to you. The Iranian regime has been engaged in many instances of terrorist actions inside and outside its borders. So we have to protect ourselves in Iraqi Kurdistan.
And you don't get any criticism from the Iraqi government for your presence there that brings in the Iranian regime, as you say?
Yes, there have been tensions and things like that, but it's manageable.
Were you surprised what happened in Syria, the speed with which the change occurred?
Everybody was surprised, but I welcome the developments. I welcome the toppling of Assad. It was a brutal regime against everybody, and it was a proxy of Iran against its own people. And so, yes, I welcome the opportunity for the Syrian people to decide about their future. I hope they have a just society, a fair and democratic society in the future.
And what implication is it for the Syrian Kurds?
The Kurds have every right to have a fair share of the future of the country. They have been fighting ISIS and Daesh very successfully. They have sacrificed a lot, and you cannot deny the rights of Kurds in Syria.
I understand what you say about them having the rights. Do you feel they will actually get them? Do you think they're in a stronger position now?
I hope so, and I hope the United States and the West supports them.
What impact do you expect losing Bashar al-Assad will have on Iran's current regime?
Very much, because it was a very severe blow to the Iranian authority, to the Iranian power in the Middle East. First Hamas, then Hezbollah, then losing Bashar al-Assad and toppling its regime was very important for the people, for the region. It will have lasting implications for the whole region, not only for the Kurds. And it was a severe blow to the Iranian regime as a proxy and ally. So it has weakened the Iranian regime and its hegemony in the region.
Where does Israel fit in all of this? Because often the situation, the dynamic in the Middle East is portrayed as essentially Israel versus Iran, and many believe that Israel sets America's agenda against Iran too. But where does Israel fit in all of this for you?
The Iranian regime is against everybody in the region. Of course, it sometimes recently pays lip service to the Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates, but they are not genuine. These signs of friendship are not genuine. They want to destabilize the Arab states to pursue their own agenda of creating a Shiite empire in the region. They're against Israel and want to annihilate it. They want the United States to be out of the region. So they are against Turkey, but they have hidden agendas in Turkey. So what we want is an Iran, a free, peaceful Iran that is in cooperation with its neighbors, everybody. And that's something that only can happen after this regime.
But I wondered, with Israel being the enemy of Iran, the way it's seen, for you as Komala party, as the Iranian opposition, is there an element of the enemy of my enemy is my friend?
Well, it's enough to say that Israel in itself is not and should not be a threat to Iran. It's the Iranian regime that has always threatened the Israelis, and this should stop. In the future, Iran, you can criticize Israel or any country, but you cannot try to annihilate any country.
There is that perspective that if you, as the opposition to the current regime in Iran, are looking to topple it, that anyone who's against the current regime would want to support you in terms of Israel, the US, and so on. Do you see that support?
I haven't seen yet.
And in terms of the attacks that Israel and Iran had recently between each other, sometimes subdued in order not to let things escalate too far, what went through your mind when you saw that occurring?
I thought it was unnecessary to have to fight your neighbors. Israel is thousands of kilometers far from Iran, and it shouldn't have happened in the first place.
I guess the critics would argue that Israel took action in Iran, taking out leaders, and taking out leading figures that they opposed in places like Iran, so action took place there.
But Iran declares openly their intent to put an end to the state of Israel. They are pursuing a very ambitious and dangerous nuclear program. What would you do?
If your party was to achieve its goals, let's say, for example, you're in some sort of position, whether it be in some kind of leadership position in Iran, how would you build a relationship with Israel? What would you be looking for?
Like other countries, like other neighbors.
Is there any chance, in your eyes, that the case against Iran and perhaps support for Israel might be weakened by what's been going on in Gaza? For a lot of people that believe that Israel's actions have been excessive. Is that hurting your cause?
Could be, but they're separate issues. Iran has supported not the legitimate rights of Palestinians for statehood. It, in fact, has ruined their chances of that, because they don't want a two-state solution. They don't want peace. They want to put violence into the region.
The Turkish Kurds have taken also quite a sudden decision through their leader, the PKK leader, Abdullah Öcalan, to disarm and step back. What were your thoughts there?
I agree with the ceasefire, or their putting down their arms. I think it's in the best interests of Turkey generally, and Kurds especially, to put behind the violent history that they had and give peace and democracy a chance. I think it would be in the best interest of everybody in the region. Even for us, it's a good development. I support it.
Dr. Mohtadi, as we're running short of time, I should point out your family was a very prominent and successful family, but it has a long history in activism. And it was almost natural that you would get involved in that too. Do you believe that there is a chance in your lifetime you will see the regime change in Iran, considering it's held out for so long?
I hope so, and I think so.
Dr. Mohtadi, I hope we have a chance to speak again. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kurdish Iranian opposition leader Abdullah Mohtadi on his hopes for Iran's future. That's it for this edition of the show. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and leave comments, and I'll see you next time.